and it starred Nicole Kidman, and it was directed by this unbelievable director, Karan Kusama, and I loved working with both of those women so much, and I learned so much about like acting and myself and the process during that. And unfortunately, I felt like that movie didn't get seen as much as it deserved to have been seen. Particularly for their work, but also just the kind of opportunity that I had in that movie that the director had given me, by hiring me and just giving me a chance to look different, to do different things. So that's a movie I feel proud of. I also feel really proud of this Netflix movie that I did called Devil All the Time with Tom Holland. But also Antonio Campos, who's again an unbelievable director, and that was I'm not sure how many people did see that movie, but anyway, yeah, maybe
it's on Netflix now, I think.
Yeah, it's always there, but just like I felt like both of those directors really took a chance on me in terms of just allowing me to do something different, and that's kind of what I keep trying to do.
Karan Kusama's early film was Girl Fight, and she found Michelle Rodriguez, right?
Oh yeah, Girl Fight, and then also she did a movie called The Invitation, which is a really great movie. She's great, yeah.
Yeah, so The Destroyer, all you listening out there, go check it out.
Yeah, Karan Kusama.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
Let me call on our next student, Daniel Rodriguez, is class of 2021, is a major in management, science, and engineering.
Hello, Sebastian. Bucky Barnes has become an iconic character in the MCU. However, I was wondering how you felt about the final portrayal on camera. So I wanted to ask, if you could have changed one thing about Bucky, what would it have been?
You're saying the final portrayal on camera now at the Disney Plus?
Yep.
If I would change anything, no.
He would be Captain America?
No. I know, like, that feels like it's sort of like the general thing that I should be answering yes to, maybe. I don't know, because I know I get asked that a lot, like don't you want to be? And I'm like, but I'm not really sure that's like the right. If I'm being true to the character, like to that character, then I don't know if that's really like what that character really wanted, ultimately. So far. Again, now at the end of this season of the Disney Plus show, like, we've gotten him to a place where I think he has some possibility towards kind of a different approach to life than he's had before. But I felt like we really needed to earn the beats in terms of his transition and stuff. And the only thing, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what I would have done differently. I felt like things went pretty okay so far. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much, Daniel. Thank you. And then our last panelist is Deborah Jantz, who's class of 2022, who's also a major in international relations.
Cool. Yeah, hi, Sebastian. Thanks for joining us. So I wanted to ask, do you ever feel that there are certain expectations placed on you in real life to be a certain type of person, especially kind of given this complicated hero role you play in the Marvel Universe? And how do you respond to those expectations, if so?
Totally, and this is a great question. And look, I feel like this is a very relatable thing. I assume all you guys sort of have various degrees of this experience now, right? Because of social media and how interconnected we all are, and essentially what the social media experience is in terms of, you're opening up an app and you're looking at like there's a feed and there's pictures of people doing things and you're sort of like, oh wow, they look really happy and amazing, and like, what am I doing? And like, why is, like, I don't know, like, maybe look at what your international relations, like are you fucking kidding? Like, I would be like, I should be asking you questions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you probably read like 1,000 books and you just like finished, I don't know how many essays or whatever, sorry, I'm being general. And then like you go to this social media, I'm not assuming or projecting or anything. Well, maybe, because anyway, like even if I read a book, right, like per se, then you go to this app and suddenly you open it and immediately it like sort of steals something from you. It steals sort of an experience you just had in a way, because there's nothing to be comparable to that. So but I think it's very much part of our world and part of what we have to sort of deal with. We just have to kind of like learn how to deal with it better. And I think, yeah, there's definitely parts of that I still am trying to understand and you know, kind of find my way through. I think when you play a recognizable character enough, people sort of assume you're just this character. And I find that really difficult sometimes, because I feel that my life is like, so there's so much more, and there's so many more other things happening than just this experience, right? But people are just used to that particular experience. And I think now that with the technology of today, we're sometimes given so much of one experience that we assume, and we like, there's a bonding that happens naturally, as it would, you know, to a particular kind of experience that we sometimes tend to forget about the person, the human, all these other things that they may or may not be going through. And it can be very difficult when the reality sort of catches up to the fantasy of what we project, you know, and what we see. And, but again, how do you deal with it? Like, it's like, I remember the Godfather quote, Godfather Part 2 quote, which is always like, this is the business I chose, right? So it just sort of comes with the business. Like, there's no complaining about it. I just sort of go like, you know, I'm very lucky to be able to do this, and I don't feel like it's something I can waste time on per se. But I do think sometimes we've, like, now a little bit more than before, it feels, we tend to forget about the people behind some of these characters, you know, and we just sort of assume that it's just a certain way. And then when it's not, I think it's difficult for people to understand or to relate. And the initial reaction is usually emotional, and, you know, there's an outburst to that of some sort, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, in a way, I mean, you coming here tonight and just talking to us is like sharing, you know, more authentic versions. Not, I want to say more authentic versions, but, you know, versions that are closer to yourself, and we get to see this version of you.
We have to, yeah. I mean, I think we're all in the same boat in that regard, you know. I just think, yeah, I think we have to find ways to keep communicating and stay connected in a way that beyond sort of like the perception of things, because there's a lot of stuff sort of being kind of thrown out there, you know, just in general. There's just so much content generated at all times.
I mean, it strikes me that, and then maybe we'll go to the questions from the larger group. But you have done so many roles and continue to do it. I mean, Tommy Lee, currently, the pictures of Tommy Lee made a stir. But I mean, I just now look at you and I'm like, Jeff Gillooly, like you know, and you know, there's so much that you've done, and hopefully you continue to do. And Bucky is part of it, but so are all these other dimensions, right? That's a nice place to be in.
No, of course. I mean, you know, I always, I look at some of my Marvel co-stars, particularly,
which is a great phrase, by the way. Just you know, for a moment, take in the phrase, you know, my Marvel co-stars.
Well, the Marvel co-stars, I guess that's weird to say. But like, for example, like Jeremy Renner, right? Like, that's an actor that I loved in so many movies, and Anthony very much has been in some of my favorite movies, and both him, Scarlett Johansson. I mean, there's Mark Ruffalo, Paul Bettany, like they've been in so many movies, you know, beyond Marvel and stuff. And I always felt like I got my start really with, you know, Marvel really opened the door for me to some of these roles you're talking about. Like I don't, you know, I have no idea how things would turn out, but I know that to some extent, like I'm playing this role today because, you know, there was a door that was open there as a result of Marvel. So I have a different kind of relationship in a way, I feel like, because it always rotates back to them, but it's always one of gratitude and I think you know, I think the point of this, of like the acting aspect of it, is just to continue to offer different things or offer different perspectives, or, you know, and try to challenge yourself and not get sort of stuck in one particular way of doing something. And that's all I'm trying to do. It's just sometimes go as far away in the opposite direction, and then I can come back, you know, to the Bucky Barnes role and be excited to play him again, like having learned something all completely new, because I'm not always doing the same thing, or it's not causing me to, you know, sort of get up and get used to things. I think being comfortable is not a good thing. You know, it's like that fine balance. We're always trying to find stability, you know, but then like you need a little instability in order to kind of like motivate you in a different direction. And fear is sometimes a really good thing.
I want to make sure we have time for the Q&A from the group. So I think Polly is going to moderate that. Is that right?
Yes, we do have time for one more question if you had any more.
Okay. Sure, yeah. Well, this is kind of I don't know if it's a craft or a nuts and bolts thing about acting, but we've been talking about all the different roles. Do you have a process where like you do the same things to find your way in, or is every role different in terms of finding, I don't know, something that makes it click for you, or a way into that character?
That's the thing about this. It's like, and there's no like textbook to it. You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, I'd gone to Rutgers and how much I always admire Stanford, right? But like, because they didn't have an acting program, it wasn't necessarily where I ended up going, you know, like, or drifting. But yeah, I think there's never a textbook to it. It's just every sort of project and experience its own animal and comes with its own sort of things. I think I try and take my cue off the director usually and the script, and it depends on what that requires. And it's interesting playing somebody who's known or, you know, somebody who existed per se, because then it feels like a lot of the work to some extent has been done for you. Now you have to sort of like mold yourself into this thing, and like, but right, the pro is that you don't have to kind of go and spend all this time creating a backstory of what's happened in the whole like childhood psychological trajectory of like why is that character behaving like this and that. You have a history, but then you've got to like somehow find a way to mold yourself to that, and that's its own difficult thing. But I think you have to have a strong point of view always about why it is that what's at the heart of it. And maybe that's not just for acting alone. Maybe that applies to everything, you know, for any kind of profession. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why this, you know, and what's something incredibly honest about it that you can say with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it strikes me that often in the creative process, and I think it's probably true in scientific discovery and intellectual discovery, you don't always know. You have kind of an instinct towards it. And then by doing it, you start to unpack what it is you're doing. You have kind of an instinct, and then you clarify as you do this thing. And then it suddenly kind of comes to you what you're doing, maybe. Or do you feel it from the beginning, like, okay, I want to do this role because I think Tommy Lee is like that thing we said about social media is one thing to the world, and I want to bring more to it.
Oh, it was never. I mean, when it comes to acting, I definitely do not think about social media. Like then it's like a free fall, total. Like I might as well just hand in the gloves and call it a day. You know, you can. I mean, like, but this was a particular. This was a very scary thing because it's so different from my day-to-day existence that I go, I have no idea what that is like, you know, but you know what? I want to understand, like, I want to try and understand that, you know, playing the drums, like trying to understand how to, you know, what is that about? Like, there's a very visceral experience about playing the drums, you know, it like, there's something to that goes back to being a human being to, I don't know how many years, you know, but like, you would never know that, like, when you're playing it, because you're just assuming you have an image of a drummer or you have an image of this particular drummer a certain way, but what does that even mean for him or for that character or whatever? Like there's endless questions to it. And I think, again, like my number one thing is like, if it really terrifies me, then that's probably the way to go.
Hey, that's great. How about now, Polly? Should we go to the Q&A now? Great.
Now is perfect, especially since we have 99 plus questions. They stopped counting up the number of questions.
Don't worry if we go over a little bit. Like, it's all good. Like, it's fun to talk to you guys. So don't, you know, I know you have a schedule and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to throw a quick reminder out there to everybody that there is no screen recording or videos allowed. We were just talking about social media, and we all know about the ability of things to go viral.
Right.
So I am going to be reading you a couple of questions that we're getting from the chat from students. So the first question comes from Michael. He says, Anthony Mackie has joked that you would rather spend time with your plants than with people. Would you consider yourself an introvert? And if so, do you feel that being more reserved is valued in Hollywood or not?
Wait, what was the last part? Do I feel like I'm an introvert? And then do I feel like
that's valued in Hollywood or that's not valued?
There's so many great pieces to this question. First of all, Anthony Mackie is very upset that I won't hang out with him because he's exhausting on a regular basis. And so he's just jealous that, like, I'm, you know, like, our relationship is this, you know, do you remember when you were, like, very young and then your friend would come to your door and, like, knock on the door and then your mom would open the door and they'd be like, is so-and-so, can they come out and play? Like, that's, like, basically what my relationship with him is, you know? But he is right, absolutely. Like, I grew up an only child. I spent a lot of time alone growing up. Absolutely. Do I think I'm more of an introvert? For sure. In fact, I actually crave spending time alone sometimes. Like, I don't know why it's just part of my upbringing and stuff. So he's totally right in that sense. And sometimes I definitely need a nudge to, like, you know, go out there and kind of, like, you know, get on with it. Like, stop pontificating about, like, what's going to happen to everyone and everything. But, in terms of the last question, whether that's something that Hollywood
values, maybe that's something that's too hard to speak on.
I'm not sure Hollywood cares.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, Hollywood. It's like, I don't even know if I know what Hollywood is, or like one of the reasons I've always valued staying in New York, for example, as opposed to LA, as much as I love LA, is I never understood kind of the business entirely, and I never really wanted to so much. I definitely feel like there's a lot of pieces to it that don't feel true. You know, and there's a lot of dishonesty and manipulation and you know, I don't know, like living in New York has kind of always grounded me in a way. And I think Hollywood just goes towards like what they think, you know, like they need to do in the moment of time. I don't, it's not a compass of, if you're trying to be an actor, if you're trying to be a writer, if you're trying to be a director, don't worry about what Hollywood thinks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, be yourself. That's the number one thing I could ever offer. Is actually go against what you hear, you know, you should be doing or not doing, or you know, it's just because it's just not a good compass in my opinion.
No, that completely makes sense. Thank you so much for your honesty. So the next question comes from Autumn, and she's wondering, and this I think is a really important question, is how important was it for you to be in a show like The Falcon and the Winter Soldier that really takes on and addresses the racial tensions that are so high in America right now?
Oh, I mean, you know, we felt always from the beginning, and remember, we started shooting the show like way even before the pandemic, and you know, we were supposed to be the first show out. I think we were very proud of that, and then we were sort of bummed that we weren't going to be able to finish the show in time. But in the process of it, having all of us, you know, stopped shooting and then having experienced 2020 and everything that happened and returning to the show with that experience, you know, I felt like in a way it had empowered us to some extent to return to work in a way, and to feel that there were so many things about the show and parallels in the show, even before the pandemic, that, you know, like even just as simple as the blip versus COVID, you know, and how odd
I noticed that too. Yeah, I was like, we're all re-entering a weird world.
Yeah, and of course, the questions that Anthony's character Sam Wilson was facing going into it, and what does it mean, and the questions that we were all facing, and particularly that Bucky Barnes is facing, right? Like, to some extent, he was sort of going through an education again.
Yeah.
You know, and his past and his journey was founded in other ideas and in sort of a different time, and suddenly it's about this time and how do I fit in, and where is my place, and what is it really about?
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that I loved about the show was that it was sort of like asking the right questions. I felt we were asking the right questions. You know, who is Captain America? What is that title? What does that even mean? What is the shield about? And what is that idea? What does it stand for? What did it stood for? What is it supposed to stand for now? You know, how like, what is even this? We grow up with these, you know, you grow up with these sort of stories and so on, and then you go, okay, but now what? You know, where does that take us now? You know, and sometimes they feel like weights around your ankles, you know, as you're walking forward into the future, not backwards, into the future, you know, and they feel like they're dragging you down, these stories that you grow up with. Oh, well, by the way, this has to be this way, or this has to be that way. No, why? Who says that?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be that way? You know, and so, and I think I felt like in a way we were, you know, we were very, the fact that we didn't get to premiere when we did, and the fact that we came later, in a way, I think we all embraced it by the end, because we felt like going to work, I don't know, like we were more empowered, and it felt like we were on to something, and we just wanted to find the most honest way into it, you know?
Yeah.
And hopefully people resonated with that, which it seems like they did.
No, I certainly resonated with it. I felt like a lot of us right now are struggling with the question, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a person living in this time? And I really felt like your character and the show in general helped me like think about those questions in a new way. So it certainly resonated with me.
Yeah, no, of course. And, and it's interesting how I think, Marvel to some extent, because again, a lot of people had asked us when we were doing, after we finished the show, they were like, oh, well, did you guys go back in the writing room and did you guys change things or did you have to adjust? And we were like, actually, believe it or not, a lot of things that we were dealing with or that you had seen in the show had already, been in place in the scripts. And so, it just ended up, the timing of it couldn't have been more important, I guess.
Yeah, so since we're talking about what it means to be an American, we also got a question about your Romanian roots. Andrea was wondering, well, she notes, as a Romanian, it makes me really proud to see you talking about your identity. How do you feel that your relationship with your identity has changed or maybe has not changed as you've advanced in your career? And is there some way that you feel like you stay connected to your Romanian roots? That was a lot too, so feel free to start at any part of that.
It's really great. It's really great. I came to America when I was 12. What I understood at that time from my mother and what I understood about America, and to some extent what I love to me, because we're talking about being, about America was possibility. It was, you could be anything you want to be. It doesn't matter what it is or what you want to, and that felt to be tremendous freedom in that. And so, and change, right? Like always change, like, people, like, again, like the concept that I was given growing up is like, you're going there to change your life. You're going there to apply the things to your life that you didn't have an opportunity to apply back there, back home or whatever. But at the same time, when I came here, I very much wanted to be like everybody else. I was 12, right? Like being 14, 15, a teenager in the US, like just, I had an accent. I was just different. It was hard to fit in. And all I wanted to do was just be American, be American, be American. Like, and then finally, like around 17, 18, I sort of like started to realize that what was setting me apart was the fact that I had a background. And again, I was lucky to go to New York, right? New York is a city of immigrants. Like it's always been that. New York is, whatever you'll find something that you can relate to, whatever that may be for you, so that's like kind of like the foundation of it. And so I sort of came back around and finally did embrace sort of where I was coming from. And I felt it did help, but it's an ongoing relationship for sure, in a way. I've been more connected to Romania in the last 5 years than I have, and it's constantly increasing than I have before. Mm-hmm. But it was a journey, and I think she is Romanian, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so she'll understand from her family, I'm assuming, kind of like all the different levels of acceptance and sometimes shame and sometimes kind of pressures of living up to certain things. I'm sure she understands that. But bottom line is, I think often the things that make us different are also the things that make us sort of stick out, and those are the things that we should be looking at, I think, like,
Yeah, I mean, the things that make us unique, that make us who we are, the things we should be most proud of.
Yeah, totally.
So, sort of related to your family again, Tobias says, you come from an artistic background with your mother having worked as a pianist and you having extensive experience as an actor, both in school and on screen. What shaped your interest with art in the first place? And do you ever see yourself stepping into a different creative medium or even moving into writing or directing movies?
Well, for the last couple of years, I've definitely gravitated a lot towards writing, and I still do it. It came out of me not working as an actor, and then having to find this other thing that was really exciting. So the writing aspect is definitely, there's a few things, you know, I've worked on for a while. I don't know when they'll see the light of day, or but it was my way of expressing, I guess. I don't know, like from a psychological standpoint. Then you could, you know, it's like I found a way of communicating in a way that sort of I didn't know I could before, and that's what made sense for me. Yeah, I don't know, it just, and I just really love it. Like I feel like you have to kind of, there's so much about this business that particularly is not great. that you have to do constant work to stay in love with it. And in a way, it keeps you like being a child to some extent.
Yeah.
Like there's a sense of wonder and a sense of like excitement about it. I think curiosity is maybe the biggest thing that we should always protect, in my opinion. Being curious about a subject, being curious about whatever, like I don't know what you have to do in order to, I think it's different for everyone, like to keep yourself curious every day. But if you can do that, then I think life's just going to be a lot better.
One of Stanford's favorite catchphrases is this idea of like intellectual vitality. And so they certainly like to think that we are all intellectually curious in a variety of domains all the time. Not necessarily always true, but still.
That's cool. I like that. I'm just debating whether I have this ring light. I don't know. I guess I should.
Oh, yes. I also have my ring light over here just in case.
I have a ring light. I'm going to do it. I'm listening. Keep going.
Okay, awesome. So this one's an easy question. Rafia wants to know, when you have a 5-minute break during shooting, what do you spend that time doing?
When I have a 5-minute, when I have a 5-minute break during shooting, what do I spend my time doing?
Yeah, maybe the answer is just like food or the bathroom, but anything.
It usually just depends on what the project is. I don't, you know, I don't, I'm usually just kind of like thinking about what the hell we just did and really worrying whether any of it is good.
Really?
Like, yeah. You know.
Do you feel like you can tell? Like, can you tell in a moment, like, no, you can't. Oh.
Way too subjective. Like, it's impossible to be objective that way, which is why, like, I feel like directors, you know, I don't even know if I could ever be a good director. Like, because you're too involved. You know, after a while you can do that. But, you know, it's usually on set. It's usually I'm thinking about where I'm at.
Yeah. Awesome. So an anonymous student asks, do you ever find yourself adopting the mannerisms of any characters you play? And maybe you could also talk more generally about like how you get in character or out of character and what that process is like.
Well, that's not, well, yes, you do. You do pick up stuff all the time because if you're watching, you know, anything for a while, like over and over on repeat, then eventually you're going to start to, you know, pick things up. And then it's a very difficult thing. I haven't quite figured it out yet. Like, I think that you spend like 10 to 12 hours sort of on set in this situation, and then you come home and you sort of expect like to go back to some kind of like present moment, but usually it's not that easy because sometimes you're still ruminating on what's happened, or you're thinking about like the next day or what else is coming and so on. So but I think you have to really have a good sense of self, you know, as you're doing these things, and whatever that is for you, whether it's like, you know, like TM, I do TM, that's a big thing that I love to do, that no matter what I'm working on, I always return to, and in a way, it just kind of brings back the equilibrium to
What is that?
TM, transcendental meditation.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. When did you get into that?
About 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to go to like a school about a week to do it.
Wow.
You learn how to do it, and you get a mantra. You can't tell anybody about it.
That's so interesting.
If you wonder if everyone else has the same mantra. They just, but yeah, like it's those little pieces of kind of like that are always with you.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds you of you that always you need to bring around.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Like, I can imagine it can be hard to sometimes keep track of like who you are as an individual outside of who you are as an actor, who you are as these iconic characters. So I'm glad you started to find things that work for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's again, like I said, I think instability, if it's moderated and healthy to some extent, when it comes to creativity, is a good thing, because then it motivates you to sort of like go out there and do things maybe you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. So speaking of going out and doing different things, Emma wants to know, what other careers would you have pursued if you hadn't chosen acting?
I don't know. That's a really hard one because, yeah, I don't know. I think this is gonna be really weird, or maybe
the
not.
The weirder the better.
Weird coming from me, maybe. But there's something definitely to teaching. Like teachers, honestly, they just never
Stanford would love to have you as a professor. I'll invite you right now.
Definitely not. But I'm just saying, like, they never get like their day in court, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a hard thing. But think about it, like, you're going out there and you're inspiring people. Essentially, you're giving this message out. You're passing something on. I don't know. There's something really noble to me about that.
Yeah.
But it would have to be some kind of profession that would be about being connected to people, or like we were sort of mentioning, I think psychology is another sort of area that I've always been interested in, because it's like, what is better than studying, like why we do what we do?
Yeah. Well, I certainly agree with that as a psychology major, but that's fascinating. That's great. And not that any of us want to imagine a world where you're not an actor, but it's always fun to think about that. And you still have time. You can have a career pivot, do something different.
Well, in the future, we all will have to. I just mean in terms of for example, I read that book, obviously Sapiens, but then I read his other book called 21st Lessons for the 21st Century.
Yeah.
That book is insane. Like when you're thinking about what he talks about in that book of what we should be preparing ourselves, is like, he's like, reinvention is what all, what everyone should learn about. And you're like, I know very few people, but they're really talented and good at having been very good at and talented in multiple things.
Yeah. Great. Allison wants to know, how do you handle being a role model for children and fans? And what are things that you want to make sure that you emphasize or teach these young fans, given the spotlight you are in? I guess we were just talking about teaching, so maybe in some ways you are a teacher already.
No, just to remind everybody, there's no such thing as perfect. You gotta throw that out. There's no way. We're all just doing our best, right? I mean, I think, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about this a lot more, sort of, going forward, kind of being able to sort of offer continuously something constructive to people. And the one thing that I see time and time again on social media, on the internet, is this just how brutal people can be to each other.
Yeah.
And how easy it is to sort of attack somebody else and for whatever reason, like, or just even, I don't believe it's inherent to the people or to any individual in particular. I think it's unfortunately part of the circumstance of what it means to hide behind one of these,
Yeah.
And what it means about tracking impulses and things like that. But I get worried sometimes at how vicious people can be to one another.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, I find, like, when I think of, like, younger people and teenagers, particularly, like, growing up with, I mean, I know, like, I'm gonna be 39, so I didn't grow up with, like, Instagram. I didn't grow up with an iPhone. I didn't grow up with those things, but it worries me sometimes when I see younger people so dependent on these devices, the likes and the, God forbid, like, someone's unfriending you and stuff like that. Like, it feels very traumatic, the experience that they're having as a result of that. And I find that really worrisome. And, like, and I guess, I don't know, like, I guess the one thing I would just say is just, you cannot sacrifice authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, to any of that. And it's like, and I feel that it's a real hard road. Like, I think, I don't know.
No, and
I wish we would be a little kinder to each other. I just do. I don't know how to make that happen.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything you're speaking on are things that are
just say that, like, we're like, that hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, nobody is fucking shielded from any of it. Like, I don't care what like, we're all just humans. It's gonna hurt. Like, but then I feel like when I say that, even somebody goes like, oh, see, like, I can push a button. And it's like, I don't know. Like, why do we have to do that?
Yeah. It's like, where's the empathy?
Yes, like, I think that's what it is. Empathy, right? Like, I think it's just like finding a way to find a better way to teach younger people to continue to find and to keep empathy for one another as they go forward.
I feel like in some ways, like, being an actor is almost like a lesson in empathy. It's like learning to fully put yourself into somebody else, into somebody else's experience. And so I feel like we can learn a lot about empathy from actors in some ways.
I think so. Yeah. Well, I always, again, but there was always this idea of, like, we're reactive people. We were talking before about kind of like being able to read someone's face and the expression, and now the eyes, right? Because everything else is covered. So it's like, it's important to kind of witness where what you're doing is impacting that person, which of course you can't do online.
Mm-hmm.
You're just sending this thing out there and having a moment, and then you're going off and experiencing whatever, and then that thing just lives on, and somebody else reads it and has an experience that you don't even see how they react to it. And that part of it is, like, really kind of all over the place, but yeah, I think there's the empathy. I guess the one thing I've always loved about movies and TV shows is that you can go there and relate.
Yeah. So this sort of relates to something that Alex, who was asking. So who was your biggest inspiration as an actor, and was there a particular movie or TV show or something early on that made you realize, like, wow, like, this is what I want to do?
Well, when I was first starting out, I think Jim Carrey was definitely somebody that I was watching their movies all. I was watching his movies all the time, and I don't know why that, like, he actually made me want to be an actor. And then after that, it sort of got, like, a little deeper, and it was just, you know, I had my manager who I'd met when I was 15, who I'm still with.
Wow.
20, 24, somewhat, whatever, years later. And she said to me very early on, you gotta go and watch every single movie. Like, I'm gonna send you a whole list of movies, a whole list of actors that you're gonna have to follow and watch.
Wow.
And you know, it was, every movie was on there, like you could imagine. That was like a classic in the last, whatever, 30, 40 years. And so, I guess that was a big thing, and even, yeah, I mean, there's a few, I don't know, Robert Downey Jr. is definitely for them. Certainly somebody who I felt like I was growing up watching, and then I got to know, and I was really inspired by how they figured out their path, you know? And again, it's a really great example of that the path keeps changing, and you've got to sort of go with it in a way, and don't be too, stay flexible, I guess.
Yeah.
It might not always turn out how you think it will.
I feel like this past year has taught us all that life doesn't necessarily go exactly in the linear trajectory you hope it will. And be okay with that.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes something great could come out of that.
Yeah. So you mentioned being sort of inspired by and enjoying Robert Downey Jr. as an actor. I was wondering, have there been any other actors or actresses that you've gotten to meet on set that you just were so excited about meeting, that you were a fan of before, like getting to work with them?
Well, I've been very lucky to work opposite some very, very strong women.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, I think, you know, I was mentioning Destroyer before, like, working with Nicole Kidman was very, very special. There's a movie that hasn't come out yet, where starring Jessica Chastain and Penelope Cruz, and I got to work with them, Diane Kruger, Lupita was in that. I mean, like, it was you know, so I think that was kind of a very special experience. And then I don't know, I've tried to sort of gravitate towards projects where there are better actors. I know as a result, like, they'll elevate me, and in all those cases I felt like as a result, I had to go home and kind of like get my shit together and show up the next day with my best, you know, because I knew that they were going to be bringing that, and I owed that to them. So it's always about the company you keep, you know.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I think this is a great question. Rio wants to know, as an actor and someone who works in an industry in which rejection is so common, what advice do you have to students like us for bouncing back from those experiences and learning from it? I certainly have been rejected many a time from internships and opportunities.
Yeah, okay, so not like obviously acting, but just like rejection period.
Yeah, rejection period. You didn't also talk about it specifically related to acting, but...
No, I know. I'm thinking about it because it's obviously something we're all dealing with. Like, it doesn't matter what it is anymore, you know, what the profession is, or I think rejection is a really great tool. I think it can be a really great tool for you, like for anybody. It's just like that whole thing of being knocked down. It's just cliche, right? But it's like, you get knocked down, and then you get, but it's, I think it's just in the same line of, you know, it doesn't kill you, make you stronger. Like, there's something about rejection that I think can drive you if you can look at it in a certain way without the emotional counterpart. The emotional experience of it is going to be very hard, right? But as long as, like, you can get this and that working together, then it's sort of going to be okay. If one of them is sort of overpowering the other, then it's going to be difficult. But in that case, I don't know, maybe there's a way to step back at that and kind of go, okay, That's all right. If that didn't work out, I'll just keep going. There was a producer I met when I was just starting out, 22, and they were very successful, and I was doing the first movie I ever worked on, and it was called Tony and Tina's Wedding, and this producer sort of like, you know, he was kind of on set, he was working in the same building, and then said to me, you know, you're never gonna make it because you're too nice.
Damn.
And, it's just the wrong business for you.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta be a real asshole. And I was like, fuck, I mean, anyway, but I actually have seen that producer since. Life, in a weird, magical way, has had this producer and I guess he lives in New York, like over the last 10, 12 years, somehow, like, I passed him on the street. There was one time I was running on the West Side Highway, he was running the other way. I have seen this man since. And there was nothing I could say to him or offer to him at the time except like complete shock and fear, right? But every time we have passed, we've never said hello, but he's acknowledged, he's seen me and I've seen him, and there's always been an acknowledgement that he was wrong. and like there was something about that like kind of, there was nothing that needed to be said. But my point is you can take it and kind of make it work for yourself, you know, and just keep pushing through. Don't look to too many places. Like, don't try to compare yourself to too many different people's outcomes, because everyone's journey is different and yours has to go a certain way. I don't know, Harrison Ford, out of all people, I mean, he was a carpenter, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything until he was like, he didn't get a job, Star Wars, he didn't get Star Wars, right? Whatever, like till he was his early 40s. You just don't know when things are gonna fall the way that.
Yeah. No, that's a great advice, and certainly applicable to all of us, no matter what career path we're seeking. Arnav wants to know, what's something you're proud of, but you often don't have an excuse to talk about?
I have a difficult question. What is something?
I was just saying, I don't know how I would answer that question. So, anything you're proud of generally.
I think I've managed to remain interested in people.
Yeah.
I guess I'm proud of that in a way. Like, I know that might sound really crazy, or not. I don't know. I just think, like, generally what happens, like, what I've witnessed is, and I think this doesn't have to be just for acting. I think this is for whatever it is that you know you want to do, your dream job, your dream role, your dream work. Is that the more you get successful at something, like somehow the world keeps getting smaller. And, you know, I think you have to find friendships that, like, you have to sort of water, like, you know, like relationships, like they take a lot of work and you've got to invest in them. And there's another version where you can get really closed off and really kind of like freak out and want to push people away and want to push everyone away. And I think it takes great courage to stay open and still be curious and interested in people, and give people the benefit of the doubt, you know, like don't get bitter about any of it, I guess. And so I feel like I've had enough opportunities where I probably could have, you know, gotten very closed off in a way, and I haven't. I stayed open, and I don't know if I ever get to talk about that or not, but like whatever, like it's just that's what came to my mind, I guess.
How do you sort of find it within yourself to stay open and give people the benefit of the doubt and stay interested? Is there any I know you talked about meditation, but
no, you have to, because you have to make it. You have to stay curious about them. You can't filter people's experience through your experience. You have to go like, there's always going to be a voice that in your mind that's going to go, well, I would do this, or like, well, and you got to go, well, that's not you. So I think staying open is staying interested, like actually ask questions, like ask the other person questions. Like, you know, if you're meeting somebody said to me a great piece of advice one time, where they're like, if you're meeting somebody, like actually ask them questions about who they are. Like, what are they into? Like, don't, you know, we're so prone to, like, I don't know, like talk about ourselves all the time, you know?
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I realize as we're in an interview format where I'm completely asking you about yourself, but no, that is, I think, great advice. We have time for about one more question. I think this is kind of a fun one. Daniela wonders, of all the characters you have played, which one of them do you think would get into Stanford or even want to go to Stanford?
Oh my God, Stanford. None of them. None of them seem to be that bright. There, I don't know, man. I haven't played that character yet. Still got to work on that.
It's coming down the line. I'm sure it will be there eventually. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap up now. Jose and I are so excited to have this event begin our tenure as co-presidents of Stanford Speakers Bureau. I learned so much tonight, and I'm sure I can speak for the rest of Stanford Speakers Bureau and all of our attendees to say that this was just an absolute delight, especially during such a difficult year with online classes and everything else going on.
Well, look, you guys are great, and thanks for hearing me out for a while, and you know, being curious about, I don't know, me, I guess, and so I really appreciate it, and it's fun, you know.
Yeah.
Let's have a good year.
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to give out a few thank yous to our advisors, Snehal, Trista, and Navia, for all their support throughout this process. Thank you to Senior Lecturer Adam Tobin for doing such an amazing job moderating the first part of this event, as well as to each of our student panelists. Finally, on behalf of the Stanford community, I want to thank Sebastian and the entirety of his team for making this event possible. I had such a wonderful time, as I said. Jose, I think, is going to close off our event, but thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Sebastian. I just want to remember everyone to follow Speakers Bureau on social media and to subscribe to our mailing list at speakers.stanford.edu so you can hear for upcoming events first. And of course, thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a great weekend and a great end to this quarter.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.